So, our final speaker then, can we welcome Kristen Reyher from the University of Bristol. The talk is going to be From Policy Takers to Policy Makers, Development of an Antimicrobial Stewardship Policy for Dairy Farmers. So you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizing committee for asking me to speak. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and coffee, but there's been lots of talk this morning already about vets and what we think, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about farmers and when we ask them what they think and what they tell us that they can do, and in fact have shown us that they can do in the UK. So in the UK, there's not at the moment government mandate. I think we're talking about what politicians say. UK politicians don't know what to say at the moment. And yet there's lots going on from a number of other sources about antimicrobial use. So Responsible Use of Medicines in Agriculture Alliance, giving some forward-thinking things about how we should be using medicines responsibly. The UK 5-year antimicrobial strategy also has been published. And what we're seeing more and more are the retailers, the milk buyers, other people in the agricultural industries starting to say, as has been said here before, this is what we think. We're going to put some targets out there. We're just going to do some things, maybe based on the science, maybe not. And a lot of that's been done in a very top-down approach. So this is what it is. Now you guys have to meet this. And when we were approached to help one of these retailers think about an antimicrobial stewardship policy, we said we think we should do it the other way around. Let's do it bottom up and let the farmers tell us what they think they can do and what they will do with participatory policy making. And participatory policy making is an innovative change that helps to fill a void when there isn't this public policy that's being imposed on you and coming from the top down. And it allows empowerment of stakeholders to formulate their own plans, implement their own plans, monitor their own plans, and then evaluate them so that they can do some more formulating and some more implementing and some more monitoring and make a change. And we believe that this really helps to improve the sustainable farm practice change because the suggestions that come from the dairy farmers are very practical, very implementable, things that they know they can do on farm, otherwise they wouldn't suggest them. And it also gives the farmers a sense of control, a sense of ownership, so it makes them more likely to buy into, yes, we will really do this because we said that we could and we said that we would. So again, last year we were approached by two groups of dairy farmers, Waitrose dairy farmers who are conventional farmers, and Coombe Farm who are organic farmers, working together to supply a milk pool for a large UK retailer, working alongside some veterinarians from Synergy Farm Health and RAF Solutions that were advising them, and also one of the milk buyer, Dairy Crest. And they said, look, we want to create an antimicrobial stewardship policy, do something in the realm of antimicrobials, and what could we do? And we said, well, how about this participatory policy making? And to start off, we said, okay, well, we want to get the farmers together. We want to see what they know and what they want to do, but we need to give them some sort of structure. And luckily, there was a great paper out of the Netherlands, David Speksnyder's work, that provided a nice conceptual model. So let's think about the different principles we could give them to start off. What about disease reduction strategies, ensuring correct use of medicines, avoiding prophylactic use, and there's been lots of talk about that already today, and encouraging quality data recording and use, and we just had a question about that as well. So let's give them these realms and see what they can come up with. So this idea for the need for a policy was broached. There was a development team put in place. We set about these objectives. And then what we did is got all the farmers together. So we held 4 regional workshops across the UK. And I don't know about you, other vets in the room, but myself, when we would hold farmer training workshops, someone would say, well, we'll expect 30 farmers to come. And I would think, well, maybe 20 are going to show up. And oh dear, it's June and it's very sunny outside. Maybe that's going to be 10. So I organized the first of these at the University of Bristol, and they said we expect about 30 people. I catered for 20. There were 35 that showed up, so anybody in the Bristol team didn't get any lunch that day, but they really voted with their feet, and in fact we had all of the farmers in these milk pools turn up, and a veterinarian from each of their practices that were representing them as well turned up to these meetings and spent sunny June days inside talking about antimicrobial usage, so I was blown away by that. We gave them first a bit of a presentation, and we used an audience response system. So we gave them little clickers and asked them to vote on questions that we could ask on the PowerPoint to see what they thought about this issue. And we also did some talking about raising awareness. etc. And then we split them up into focus groups just of farmers or just of vets. There wasn't allowed to be a vet in the farmer focus group because we like to talk, and we don't give the farmers a chance to talk, and we didn't want that to happen. So we let the farmers talk about it, and we let them come up with examples of things that they thought they could do. Anybody who's ever been in some of these participatory action groups is used to Post-it notes, so have people write things down on Post-it notes. We gave them a target sort of graph on the wall that they could post those up on, again, split into the 4 quadrants from the 4 principles we talked about earlier, and asked them to put things they really thought they could do very close to the center of this target, things that they didn't think they could do so easily but they might be interested in thinking about further out in the target. And again, as a veterinarian and who works in communication and has learned a lot about myself and my poor communication, I would usually go in and from a top-down approach say, okay, well, there are 10 things I think you need to do for antimicrobial stewardship, but you won't do that, and you won't do that, and you definitely won't do that. You won't even consider that. So please, here are the 4 things I think you might want to do. Could you do those? Well, when we gave the farmers the driving seat, they put up about 15 things and said, we'll do all of these things. And again, completely surprised me. You'll do that? Of course, yeah, definitely. And if you don't do that, then you don't supply you're not in our club. You don't supply this retailer. So again, that was quite amazing to me. At the end, we asked them to evaluate the workshops to give us what they thought were the overall challenges and benefits to farmers about improved antimicrobial stewardship. And we asked them some feedback questions as well, which I'll present. So then we took, myself and a PhD student, took all of this data, put it all together, tried to start to formulate some sort of draft policy, which we then took back to the farmer representatives and said, okay, here's what we got from you. This is how we synthesized it. What do you think? And they said, yes, yes, that, oh no, maybe we'll change that slightly. Then we consolidated that policy. It was approved by everyone, sent out to all of the producers, which then started to develop some implementation tools for use in this policy to implement it, and we've already got a little bit of evaluation and update that I'll present today. So with this audience participation tool, need to learn how to say that word, we asked the farmers, so do you think antimicrobial resistance is just a fashionable topic or a passing fad? And the majority of them said no, we think it's something that's here to stay, it's something we are concerned about and we want to do something about. Then we said, all right, thinking about the UK, where you live and work, and your neighbors, do you think overall our livestock sectors use too much antibiotic? And again, 80% of them said, yep, we really think they do. And we said, what do you think about antimicrobial resistance? How much of it do you think is on our farms? And there was a fairly decent spread of people that thought, well, not very much, very few farms, or maybe some that said, yeah, every farm out there will have some antimicrobial resistant bugs. Then we asked them what they thought about their own individual farms, and I find this quite interesting because there was a good spread for what they thought about farms across the UK, but when we asked them about their own farms, they said, oh, I think I might have mild antimicrobial resistance or moderate resistance on my own farm. The majority of them did, whether that's because they've seen treatment failures or they think the drugs don't work as well as they did for their grandfathers, etc. We didn't really do much qualitative work to find that out, but that's their overall thoughts. Then we asked them if they thought that they personally in their farms could reduce their use of antimicrobials while maintaining the same production levels and health as Teo presented earlier, and 3/4 of them said, yeah, we think we could do that. And more than half of them, because this was the conversation about these critically important antimicrobials, more than half of them said, we think we could really stop using these. And remember, half of these farmers were organic farmers as well, so that's indicating that a lot, maybe it was a half organic farmers that said, no, we can't really do very much because we're already not using very much, and the conventional guys that said, no, maybe we could do more. We asked them as well about what they thought the importance of the role of the veterinarian and the farmer, and you can see here that they thought the veterinarian and the farmer had a lot of importance in this realm, that they could do a lot, had a lot to be able to offer here. Maybe a bit more for the veterinarians than for the farmers. So out of this, we came up with some policy statements, and again, these were agreed by all the farmers to say things like, we think all producers that supply us should use animal production practices in order to reduce and, where possible, to eliminate the need for antimicrobial therapies. We want all producers to work together with their veterinarians to assess and address the disease risk regularly, and by regularly, I think the details are maybe every 3 to 6 months, and really look at herd health planning based on antimicrobial use, not so much as just mastitis or just lameness, but thinking really about antimicrobial use, which isn't done so much in the UK at the moment. All staff need to be engaged with training and responsible use, or they need to be adequately supervised by staff. And this was also a bit contentious because some farmers said, you know, I have 3 relief milkers that work on an occasional weekend. I have to get them trained to use antimicrobials. Whereas their fellow farmers said, well, if they're spraying chemicals or if they're driving a vehicle, they have to have a license, don't they? And the other guys said, yeah, I guess they do, actually. So we think this is as important as some of those other things that require a license. All the farms, they also said, would try to use, minimize the use of antibiotics to prevent disease, and that they would also collect unified data and benchmark them across one another to within their farms and between farms to work towards further reductions in antimicrobial use. Some of the quotes that came back from them, and I think this was the most rich and most exciting part of it, was getting farmers sitting together and talking, and they said, it really made me think about my antimicrobial use, knowing the opinions of my fellow producers. And at one point we had someone who said, you know, I just used 3rd generation cephalosporins, they work really well, I really like them, sitting next to somebody that said, yeah, but I haven't used them in 5 years, and you've seen my farm, my cows are healthy, my stats are the same as yours, milk production, somatic cell count, etc. Oh yeah, how did you do that? Well, I keep my dry cow yards really clean, et cetera, et cetera. So really that, learning from one another was very important. The vet said we see ways that we could move our practice forward. We could really focus on drug usage as part of our herd health plan. And the farmer said this is great because we are actually being asked to make policy that really will work for us. Almost half of them said that it was challenging, however, to participate in these meetings because they're quite used to sitting back and letting someone tell them what to do. So now we really said, you need to think. Why did you come up with those answers? What sorts of things could you do that you're not already doing? And they did find that a bit challenging. But more than half of them said, yeah, we'll go home and we'll make some changes because of what we've participated in these workshops. And in fact, this has been going for about 6 months, so it was very quick turnaround from the end of last year to start to develop a system, pull the antimicrobial usage from the vets, benchmark those, start to have some key production indicators for those. Develop some training material, so we've already run a round of training sessions, and we'd like to do much more facilitated learning instead of just training. And more than 70% of farmers, again, we use the audience participation tools, and said since the workshops, they've already changed the way that they are using antimicrobials on their farms. So that's very encouraging to us. So the conclusions from this work, this is the first that we know of application of participatory policymaking to livestock health policy, but shows that this intense collaboration and dialogue with farmers, veterinarians, industry partners, and even researchers can really be very fruitful. We developed some really credible and practical recommendations to drive real on-farm change in antimicrobial use, and think that this is a step in creating a better understanding about how we can use these sort of approaches in a UK context and here internationally as well. And as well, it's a pilot for promoting more responsible use of antimicrobials in other livestock species, not just dairy cattle. And in fact, we have an EU grant, hopefully that will still get paid, at the moment about hens, henovation, and using these sorts of approaches in hen welfare. So just to thank you very much to the members, we have a research group at the University of Bristol called the Antimicrobial Force. The force is with you today. So to thank the members of those as well as our collaborators, and a shameless plug, we just got a grant to look at antimicrobial resistance specifically on dairy farms for 3 years, and also to combine that with human transmission. And we're looking to recruit 2 vet qualified researchers, so if you're interested in moving to the UK, and hopefully things will be okay for the next couple of years, come and talk to one of us. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. So, very, very interesting, Kristen. So we have time for a couple of questions if anyone would like to raise their hands. Bill.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Did you find the same resistance in the vets that attended your work groups to reducing antimicrobial use as reported by the other speakers today who claimed that it was due to a conflict in selling the drugs?
So most of the things that the vets said when we asked them what we needed to do to change, as I said, we did have focus groups that were just the vets so that they could talk to one another. And they also did the sticky notes and put them up on the target. But they said, we need to train farmers. We need to tell them more about what they need to do. And that's, as my PhD student presented yesterday, that's the way that vets often think. And we often say, well, as I said, you are not going to do this and you're not going to do this, so I won't even bother telling you about that. So I think we do tend to take a very patriarchal approach and really say this is what needs to be done. And that was what the vets said as well, is that in order to change things, we need to educate farmers a bit more. And we didn't really question the vets specifically about what but they did say that they could do some things to change their own practices and that they would encourage their farmers to do that as well.
Could I just have a supplementary, please?
Yep.
And that is, did you convince farmers that they would be prepared to accept a loss in an animal that would not recover because it did not get treated, as against accepting a loss in an animal that did get treated, because if you treat an animal and it dies, it was the antibiotic failed. If an animal died having advised the farmer not to give an antibiotic, then it's the advice is wrong. And maybe that's where the resistance from vets is coming, to change what has been, in our country anyway, advice for blanket use of antibiotics by the National Farm Advisory Service for 40 years.
I think there is some of that risk aversion in veterinarians, and also there's some of it in the farmers as well. But I think it's really that the farmers will have shown us that they are willing to do some things, and maybe they're a bit more brave than the veterinarians might be. But we can't know until we actually ask them, until those things actually happen.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Sandram, University Council. Just a comment and a question. On the one hand, you're not the first with this participatory approach that has been done in other countries, in Denmark and also in Germany in before. And on the other hand, I'm questioning whether it's very good to make some kind of policy bashing, in the way that, as we learned from the Netherlands, you need to have the politicians on board, because what you need to have is regulation. So you can do it with some small groups which are interested, but what about all the others who are not attending those meetings? And that's the majority. And when only a few of those farmers and veterinarians are engaged, they don't benefit from it as long as other farmers don't participate.
So we do have a PhD student that's funded at the moment from the Dairy Levy Board to involve farmers across the board, so not just one specific retailer, but
again,
in doing
as
these
we
sorts
learned
of
this
things.
morning, it's the whole reset. It's a whole thing
that we need all of those things. Yeah, I agree.
Thanks.
So just to challenge you then, how do you get all the stakeholders buying in? That's your question, because in most countries, and listening to the talk, there's always one sector, I'm not saying I'm going to pick which one, that says, oh God, I can't go there, I can't disclose that we have a problem if you're a processor, I can't change the mindset of your... So how do you get them all together? It's almost a policy, or on a regional or national basis. How would you tackle that?
Well, I think it is quite difficult, and I'm quite impressed by the work they've done in the Netherlands, getting everybody on there together and sending out the same messages, because I think that is very important. And I guess the highlight of this talk was just to maybe ask those people that are resistant, if you can get to them, what is it? What don't you engage with? Why wouldn't you engage with something? And then to try to speak into that and make changes that will engage them. But it's definitely a massive challenge.
Perhaps a few comments from our previous speakers. Two, in fact. First of all, Theo.
Well, it's
maybe you could stand up and just face so you could see you.
Yeah. Well, this exactly is the point. People have to take their responsibility, and everybody does that from his own perspective. And it may be the politicians, like in the antibiotic issue, but there are in our country, but there are other countries too, or in other issues too. We're working on BVD. The Danish have banned BVD. We are working on that now in our country too. And the issue is, how do you get all stakeholders together? And in that situation, politics won't do anything, because it's not an issue that's of national importance. But if we really want to get something done, then we need to have all stakeholders aboard. And then people have to take responsibility. Also, like in New Zealand, it's fair to say, okay, in our country people won't listen to politicians, but I can assure you that if they make a law, that you will have to listen at some point. But it will not work if the heart is not in there, if the internal motivation is not in there. So everybody, every stakeholder has to take his own responsibility. Sometimes it may be the politicians, and whether you agree with them, yes or no, it's the way it is, and you have to handle with that. And that may also be the farmers that are board members of the farmers' unions or of the dairy cooperatives or whatever.
Yes, but just to challenge you, your government made a big bold step at the start and said, look, this is the rule, you guys got to follow this. So you had that in your back pocket, if you like, as a driver. Maybe other countries don't.
Yeah, and that is a big help, of course, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah. Okay, it's not the only thing, okay. Just a comment from David, I think, yeah?
I agree with everyone else. We need all stakeholders on board, and that includes the politicians. But as we heard earlier, if politicians make decisions, they make kind of quite rash decisions sometimes. They may not be the best decisions. And I quite shamelessly challenged the vets in the room in my presentation. I do just want to clarify, though, I did not say that we should leave sick animals untreated, and I did not say that they were conflicted because of selling medicines. All right, I want it very clear. I did not say that. What I said was that sometimes, as we've heard from others, that we think we can't push the boundaries because our clients don't want us to, and our clients are receptive, as we've just heard. And we need to be brave enough to actually move our prescribing policies. Where I come back to the problem with politicians, and we've seen what can happen with politics in Europe in the last week or so, we've been following the politicians, and we've been kind of blindly saying, certainly in the UK, oh, we'll wait for the new medicine directive from Brussels. Well, that's not coming anymore, guys. My concern is that the responsibility for this is not being held by the veterinary profession, and we are not taking the lead. We're waiting for the politicians, we're waiting for the milk buyers, we're waiting for the supermarkets, and then we're following them. All right, so the real challenge is, as a profession, let's get hold of this, work with our medical colleagues, and change what we do, and not wait for somebody to hold a stick over us and tell us what we must do. All right, we need to be in the driving seat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much to Kristen, and indeed to all the speakers, and to you all for engaging in the morning. A really excellent morning, and it'll certainly, keep us well informed for the next few hours anyway, until after dinner. So thank you very much. Enjoy your coffee.